Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Saturday. I hope the weekend is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Plenty to discuss today. Got some questions and comments from you guys, of course, which we'll be getting stuck into a little bit later on in the show. We're going to talk about Kieran Tierney. Really bad news about him. Not unexpected, it has to be said, after we saw him stretch it off in Scotland's game against Switzerland. He is now returning back to Arsenal. So we'll talk about that, what sort of impact that could potentially have on a transfer this summer. We will talk about last night's international action. Big nights for Saliba, playing very well as well. Getting rave reviews after France's draw against Holland. Excellent day for Zinchenko as well. Ukraine turning things around and getting a really important win against Slovakia. We'll talk about Amario Cozier-Duberry as well, who has now informed Arsenal that he is going to be leaving the club and will not be signing the new contract offer that is on the table. So plenty to get stuck into. And I thought we'll start with Kieran, shall we? Here, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the tweet that he's put out. Heartbroken doesn't cut it. He says, love this team and these boys. This too shall pass. So yeah, really sad news for Kieran Tierney. He is returning now to Arsenal, where he will be assessed, and this hamstring injury that he sustained in the draw against Switzerland Arsenal start to map out his rehab and recovery. So Kieran Tierney's Euros are over, and just really sad. Like he said, heartbroken doesn't cut it. You know, Kieran's such a proud Scot, and you know, playing in this tournament meant absolutely everything for him, and to go out like this, just really sad for him. But you know, sort of add on top of that, you know, it's just another injury for Kieran Tierney, another bad injury by the looks of it for Kieran Tierney. And so you've got the disappointment of, you know, going home from the Euros early, but you've also got the disappointment of knowing you're staring at another rehab session. You're staring at more people commenting on your injury status. And in a summer when you were fully expecting to move and maybe leave Arsenal on a permanent basis, you know, your plans are now totally up in the air because, as we sort of touched on yesterday, any interested club is going to be looking at this and thinking, Kieran Tierney's injured again. Do we really want to take that chance? And, you know, for Arsenal, they would have absolutely been hoping that Kieran could have gone to the Euros this summer, had a really good tournament, put himself in the shop window so that any of the clubs that were mulling over making a move for Kieran this summer would have thought, you know what, look at those performances on the top international stage. He is well worth our time and our money. But now you have to think that it's going to be incredibly difficult. You know, the market was already small for Kieran because of the injuries. We saw that last summer when Arsenal were really hoping that they could get a decent amount of money for him, and just no bids arrived, and they had to end up sending him out on loan to Sociedad towards the end of the window. And that loan didn't work because of his injuries. Again, missing 3 big chunks of the season because of 3 pretty big injuries. You know, he was very popular at Sociedad, but they just ultimately decided we can't be signing this guy because of his injuries. And now any other interested club is going to be thinking exactly the same thing. And you just do wonder where the market is going to be for him this summer. It's going to be incredibly difficult, again, I think, for Arsenal to be able to make any sort of money on Kieran Tierney. And it wouldn't surprise me, again, if once he gets back from this latest injury, that a loan deal is found towards the end of the transfer window just to get his wages off the books for a season. And it's just a real shame because he's far too good a player for this sort of thing to be happening. I mean, look, football injuries are a part of football, and some players get more than others. But I just do feel really sad for Kieran Tierney because it's just looking like his career, and he's still young, and so you'd still hope he is going to have a good end to his career. But you're looking at it now, and you just think it's going to be a career that is going to go hand in hand with being out because of injuries, and it's going to really stop him achieving what he could have achieved because he's such a good player and he deserves to be playing football properly at a really high level, but just can't stay fit, and it's a real shame. So yeah, hopefully Arsenal can get him back on track and they can get him fit quickly and he can still sort something out this summer. But yeah, I don't think this injury is going to have helped his chances and Arsenal's chances of him getting any sort of permanent move this window. Okay, Amario Cozier-Duberry is leaving Arsenal, and that's obviously a really big shame. Really big shame. I was hoping he was going to start sign his contract. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting him to, but I was hoping he was going to make a sort of late call on it, and like Ethan did was going to decide to stay, but he's decided to move on. He's going to have offers left, right, and centre coming in from him in England, abroad. And I'm sure he's going to pick himself a very decent club, and hopefully he can go out and make a good career for himself. It is a shame for Arsenal. He's obviously a huge talent. I'm not massively surprised, though, I have to say, when you look at Cozier-Duberry. He hasn't played yet for the senior side, but it's not so much that. It's like he's a right winger, and he just looks at his chances of breaking into the Arsenal first team. It's like, oh, I've got Bukayo Saka ahead of me, who's just 23, just signed a new long-term contract, isn't really going anywhere. So I'm not overly surprised this is the decision he's come to. It would have been nice, I think, if he'd have signed one more contract. He could have got a good loan move next season and really tried to force his way into Mikel Arteta's thinking. He's obviously not done that. He's decided to go, I think, probably a little bit earlier, maybe one contract earlier than he really needed to. But this is the challenge that big clubs now face now. You know, young players want to play, and they want to play very, very early on in their career. And if they don't, and then they're going to move on elsewhere, and their agents are going to push them to move on elsewhere. And there's obviously a lot of examples of young players leaving these top sort of 6 clubs and going on and making a decent career for themselves and really bursting onto the scene. And Cozier-Duberry has backed himself to do that. I've seen lots of people complaining and getting into my comments going, oh, this is because Arteta doesn't play young players. And maybe it is. Maybe it does have a part of it. But, you know, he's a young kid. And I just don't. I don't really buy into the fact that this is all down to Mikel Arteta not giving Raul Walters a few minutes here and there in substitute appearances. I think you've got to look at a much bigger picture than that. And you know, Mikel's used young players before. He's using Ethan, or he's used Ethan a couple of times. I think we're going to see a lot more from Ethan this season. Sometimes you just have to be a little bit patient. Look at what happened with Pep and Phil Foden, and how patient he had to be before getting into the team. So I can see both sides of the argument. Really, I can kind of see why people are having a go at Mikel over it, and I can also kind of see why, you know, the players have got to force the manager's hands one way or the other. And if Mikel didn't think he was ready, he's not going to throw him in. And Cozier-Duberry's gone, and good luck to him. I hope he has a really successful career outside of Arsenal, but obviously disappointing that he has moved on. Right, international-wise, good day for a couple of Arsenal players, bad day for another. Obviously, France drawing 0-0, not the result they really wanted, France, but William Saliba, fantastic once again. Saliba now cemented his place at the heart of the defence for Didier Deschamps' side, helped them keep 2 clean sheets in a row at the start of this competition. He was really, really solid yesterday. A couple of great moments for him when his players were running at him, and he just was so calm in that situation, just used his strength, used his body, took the ball away. Danger was gone. Saliba just walks out without breaking a sweat. He's just an absolute Rolls Royce of a defender. Is William Saliba, just getting better and better and better. I can't wait to see him back at Arsenal, forming that partnership with Gabriel again next season. Really good day for Alexander Zinchenko. He was beaten at the back post for Slovakia's goal in the first half, but I mean, the height difference of the two players, or it certainly looked like a big height difference of the two players, made it difficult for Zinchenko when that ball was played in. Maybe could have been a little bit closer to the wide man when the cross came in, because the gap was just a bit too big, and that gave the Slovakia player gave him the run on him, and he could sort of get up and just get too high for Zinchenko. It was a good header and 1-0. But I thought Zinchenko's reaction, and I thought his performance and Ukraine's performance in the second half was very, very good. Fantastic comeback. What a goal that was. The winner by Yaremchuk. Absolutely. You know, Dennis Bergkamp, like that touch and finish, really was top quality. I think that was actually my favourite goal so far at the Euros. And Zinchenko played very well. He got the assist for the equaliser. And I think he was highest rated player when I was looking at the Who Scored ratings after the game for Ukraine. So really good performance for him. You could see what it meant to him and his teammates and all of Ukraine and the fans in there. It's a huge game. It's a game they had to win. Trailing 1-0 at half time. You know, the tournament's on the line for him. And to produce that sort of performance in the second half under that sort of pressure, I thought deserves an awful lot of credit. Not such a good game or day for Jakub Kiwior. Poland really drubbed by Austria. Austria looked very, very good, I have to say, playing some really good football. I sort of compare those sort of performances from teams, from what we've seen from likes of Austria at the moment, and compare it to what England served up, and it's just chalk and cheese. The high energy, the pressing of Austria, you know, it was just fantastic. Even in the Ukraine-Slovakia game, in the first half, when Slovakia caused Ukraine all sorts of problems, the energy levels, the pressing of the front three, then you compared it to England, and it's just nothing like it. And yeah, I thought Austria did very, very well, but it was a bad day for Poland. They're the first team to go out of the tournament. The draw between Holland and France means that Poland and Jakub Kiwior are out of the competition with a game to spare. So disappointing day for him, but a very good day for Zinchenko and Saliba. Just on Sambi Lokonga, reports coming out of Spain that Sevilla are looking to sign him only on loan, which doesn't overly surprise me, but they are looking to sign him for the season. Talks believed to be underway on that. We'll wait and see if it pans out into anything of more substance than that. But I mean, you look at it on paper, it looks like a good move for him, head into a very, very good club in Spain, in Seville. A very, very good league, a league that I think could probably suit Sambi very, very well because of the pace that it's played at and the sort of style of football that you see played in the Liga. I just think that Lokonga, it probably ticks a lot of boxes for him and how he could develop. Obviously, ideally for Arsenal, you'd want to sell and you'd want to get some money in for him, but it sounds like it would only be a loan for Sevilla. I'm not sure they're going to have the sort of money that Arsenal would want for Sambi. So while they are interested, I'm not saying for at all that he definitely would go there. I think Arsenal would probably prefer to cash in if they can, and maybe hoping that a Premier League club would come in for him on the back of his performances for Luton last season. So we'll wait and see on Sambi, but Sevilla believed to be in talks over a potential loan deal. Right, moving on to some of your questions and comments in regards to what we spoke about yesterday. Obviously, we spent quite a bit of time talking about Nico Williams and that performance he delivered for Spain and the release clause of 50 million and how tempting that must look. And there's been lots of reaction to it. Just a few of you here that I've pulled together. Aaron, first of all, says over the last 24 hours, there's been numerous links with Nico Williams again. I thought his wages demands were too high, but after that Italy game, I think we should just go and get him now that Elise is moving to Bayern and Neto is such an injury-prone player. Relatively cheap release clause for his age and performance. He will definitely be the bargain of the summer. One thing that comes to mind, though, is if we are able to persuade him to come to England and start as a backup for both wings. Other clubs who are looking at Nico, Chelsea, Liverpool, Barcelona, has a better chance of offering more playing time than Nico, than Arsenal, in my opinion. Yeah, maybe so, but who knows? You know, if Arsenal were to push the boat outside Nico Williams, maybe they're looking at him as would be looking at him as a first choice left back. Who knows? I mean, we'll have to wait and see on that. Interesting though that you mentioned that Elise is moving to Bayern. Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Delighted, I have to say, when Chelsea went in for him and the other clubs were in for him, out of all of the ones who seemed to be going, Bayern was certainly the one that I wanted him. I just didn't want him to go to Chelsea. Absolutely didn't want him to go to Chelsea. So it's like Bayern are going to get themselves a very, very good player there. Matty says Gabby's on 180k a week and Nico Williams is on just over 200,000 a week. How is that an issue? It's not so much that that's the issue now. It's that if he moved to Arsenal or he's been moving to other clubs who have been interested, he's not asking for 200 grand a week. Well, that's certainly not the number that I've seen mentioned and has been told to me. I think you can add another 100 grand, give or take, onto that when it comes to the sort of wages that he's been offering and that he's been asking for, and that surprised a lot of clubs. So that's more of the issue. And you bring a player in, you agree to those demands, and you bring a young kid in who's maybe not even going to be a first choice starter on those wages, then you just have to think it's not just that, it's the knock-on effect of everyone else, of other senior players who are suddenly seeing a kid come in who is younger than them, isn't really playing, and yet he's being paid 100 grand a week more than them. It's just going to cause that sort of ripple effect when it comes to the wage bill. So that's more of the issue than what you're saying there, Matty. And Sion Lebrain, I think that it says, hello, Charles. Funny thing is, watching Nico Williams at the Euros, I didn't realise what a great player Martinelli was. He's just as fast as Nico, but more street smart and definitely a better finisher. I think that we are getting carried away by last season's stats, but no way would I swap Martinelli for Nico Williams. And a lot of people have said that in the comments as well. And I was talking about it yesterday. As good as Nico was for Spain, and he was great, it was a really top level performance, there is always that sort of shiny new toy thing, isn't there, where you're always looking at the new toy on the shelf and thinking, oh, that's better than what I already have. But in Martinelli, you've got a top quality winger already. Yes, he had a disappointing season last season by his standards, but he's a top quality winger. And for all of Williams's qualities, and he has them, his sort of the negatives maybe from Williams is that he's not clinical enough in the final third, and that seems to be the criticism that's leveled at Martinelli enough so all the time now. So sometimes it's easy to look at a new player and think he's what we need, but you've also got a top quality player in Gabriel Martinelli, and lots of you have been pointing that out as well. In terms of what we were talking about yesterday and Gary Neville's comments on Declan Rice, plenty of comments and reactions to that as well. Northank Guna says Gary Neville lasted 8 games as a manager. He needs to sit down when it comes to talking about Declan Rice. Guna Greg says Gary is talking rubbish as usual. It's mainly because Havertz have moved from 8 to 9 that Rice has moved forward. And that is the absolute nailed on comment, to be honest. When what Gary Neville was saying yesterday when he said that that Declan was moved to 8 because for the last 15 games because Mikel didn't think he was good enough at number 6. That's just not right. He was moved to 8 because Kai Havertz was moved up front and Arsenal needed an 8, and Declan Rice ticked the boxes of what Mikel Arteta wanted from that position at that time. It wasn't because he was poor as 6. He was fantastic at 6 over the first half of the season for Arsenal, just as he has been for England for the last few years and has been for West Ham for the last few years. There's one there from Live and Learn and Tech who said, and Teach says, Neville criticising Arsenal player is nothing new. I'd drop Kane and play Watkins. At least Watkins actually ran. Oh, and her WTF is going on with player of the season Foden. Nah, must be Rice's fault. Maybe he was just tired from carrying the team in the first game. Come on. PS, that pitch was an ankle injury waiting to happen. It was. I'm so delighted that the Arsenal players got away from that pitch in Frankfurt unscathed, because that was an awful, awful playing surface, especially for a major tournament of this size. And I'd agree, look, Kane's been fantastic for England, scored so many goals, obviously scored the goal in the last game, but the lack of pressing, the lack of energy from him, your pressing starts from the very, very top. That's what made Kai Havertz so good for Arsenal as number 9 last season. And when you've got a player leading the line who's just not moving and not putting any energy or any sort of effort pressing in, then that causes problems. And there is definitely a strong argument for Watkins to come in and lead the line at the moment, because Kane just does not look fit to me at all. And as Liv, Learn and Teach suggested there, Rice was very good in England's first game playing as a number 6, and England have got plenty of problems at this tournament at the moment, but I do not think Declan Rice is one of them, even though he did have, by his standards, a very disappointing performance in the draw against Denmark. And finally, the big question before we wrap things up. Obviously, I was talking about getting this room painted, which is why you can see the different paint colours on the wall there. I was talking about that yesterday, and so many of you got him saying, are you going to finally sort the cables out? Charles, please get those cables chased in before you paint. Sorry to disappoint you guys, but I'm not sure I'm going to, because the only reason we're painting this room is because we're going to sell the house. So we're just touching the house up before we get it on the market, because the kids have absolutely wrecked it. If you saw any closer, they'd see marks all over the room. So we're just literally putting a bit of paint over it to cover it out before we get it on the market. And I'm not sure I want to put a big load of cable casing, attach it to the wall before we do that, especially when I've just painted it to touch it up. So I'm not sure I'm going to do it. Unfortunately, you might have to look at those cables for a little bit longer. But the good news is, once we do sell the house, once we do move to the new house, the plan is that I'm going to get a proper studio type thing built in the new house, because this one's just impossible. It's so small, I can't have it done in here. But when I do move to the good new house, then the plan is, after a while, perhaps, because I'm going to have to get it done, but to have a nice, proper, purpose-built studio type thing built for me to do this sort of thing. So there definitely won't be any cables in that once it is up and running. All right, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the start of your weekend, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Have a good one. Bye-bye.